Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 257, cover dated January 1989. So this is the middle part of a trilogy of stories about Psylocke's transformation into an Asian assassin aligned with the Hand. And in this second part, Wolverine enters the story, featured here on the cover in a scene from the conclusion of the issue. So noteworthy in relation to this cover is that it's by Jim Lee, who's the artist of the interior work, but it's Jim Lee inking himself on the cover here, so not collaborating with Scott Williams for this particular cover. Some interesting inking techniques he's using here on Psylocke's armor and on the background, and in the shade of the deep background he's using duotone as well, so interesting effects. So here is the story splash page, and the creative team is Chris Claremont, writer, Jim Lee, penciler. The inker is Josef Rubinstein. There's a team of different letterers, and Glynis Oliver is the colorist. So the story opens in Hong Kong, where Psylocke identifies herself as Lady Mandarin, aligned with the Mandarin, the Chinese crime boss and usual enemy of Iron Man. But in this Acts of Vengeance story, certain supervillains are put into stories with superheroes, or in this case mutants, that they wouldn't otherwise interact with. So Psylocke is sending a message to Hong Kong's crime lords, featured here, these four, that they should swear fealty to the Mandarin. They demur, and then she demonstrates her power. She's also wielding the Mandarin's rings in this. So interesting here, the color choices. Glynis Oliver using these purples and blues to indicate the nighttime scene, and then switching to red and orange to pick up on the violence of action here as Psylocke takes down the crime lord's bodyguard and goons. So one of them shoots her in the back, but he's mistaken. She has telepathic control over him, grabs him by the neck here, and uses one of the rings to pretty much blast his head, which is fairly violent there. And this really demonstrates to the four crime lords that they're going to have to suck up to the Mandarin. Then Psylocke exults in her victory here, and the scene switches to a boat arriving in the Uncanny's harbour, and the harbour patrol look to see who is on board the boat. And then Wolverine emerges wearing an eye patch here, and Wolverine has a history of a different identity, the character Patch in Madripoor, and so he's known as Patch in this part of the world and has a reputation that precedes him. And so the Harbour Patrol guys back off from hassling him or Jubilee. Noteworthy too is that Jubilee, who first appeared in Uncanny X-Men 244, hasn't had a costume yet or a uniform of her own, and this is her first costume of her own, designed by Jim Lee, and very clearly drawing on, or we might regard it as an homage to, Frank Miller's design of the Carrie Kelly Robin in Dark Knight Returns. So you've got the same colour scheme there as Robin's, And he does change that later on. He does change her shorts into blue, so as to not be so obvious in that correlation to Robin's colours. So what happens then is Wolverine, who's badly injured, very badly injured from what the Reavers did to him in Uncanny X-Men 251, where they crucified him, and he was rescued, in fact, by Jubilee, who was hiding out in the X-Men's Australian outback hideout. And he's now obviously made his way to Hong Kong. He's looking to track down what became of the X-Men. At the end, or in the middle of issue 251, the X-Men, Havoc, Dazzler, Psylocke, and Colossus went through the Siege Perilous. So Wolverine is now searching for them, and he's gone to Hong Kong to look up an old friend for help. But here in these panels, we also see these kind of ghost images of, this is Carol Danvers and Nick Fury in the background. So Wolverine is hallucinating Nick Fury and Carol, and is having a dialogue with them, which Jubilee is worried about, because it seems like he's going mad, or losing his wits. And then we get this interlude in Cairo, Illinois, where a de-aged Storm appeared a couple of issues previously. I think it's Uncanny X-Men 253. She first shows up in Cairo, Illinois, and she has been framed for murder here, and that's what's being talked about in the television broadcast that she's watching from outside a shop window. This character here, Jacob Rees, a FBI inspector, is actually the Shadow King, an old X-Men villain from the beginning of Claremont's run, and he has designs on capturing and corrupting Storm. So yeah, she's seen on the street by the police, who give chase, but she hides out on this rainy rooftop, and we'll have to keep checking in on future issues to find out how her story proceeds. Then we switch back to Hong Kong, and Wolverine arrives at the offices of Landau, Luckman and Lake, and he's met by an old friend, Rose, there, and she welcomes Wolverine and Jubilee, and the hallucinations of Nick Fury and Carol Danvers are present as well. So what happens here is, this is a very interesting little moment when Jubilee is checking out the decor and pictures in the room, and spies this old photograph of Wolverine and Rose in her younger days. And as she observes a city in the background that looks kind of like a Blade Runner or futuristic type city, and she asks the question, where the heck were they? So this is one of Claremont's ways of kind of larding in little hints and details about Wolverine's mysterious past and background. And unfortunately, this is something that Claremont doesn't see through, because of his leaving the title in about a year and a half's time, which he had no idea that was going to happen at this point. So Rose suggests that Jubilee go out on a shopping trip with her granddaughter, which she reluctantly does, and then Wolverine tells Rose the whole story about why he's there and why he needs her help, because of what happened with the Reavers in Australia, and how they're out to get the X-Men, and how he is endeavouring to find the X-Men first. And then the scene switches to the South China Sea, this island that has a hollowed out core, which is a type of training space for the hand ninja. So Psylocke is training, and it's a deadly training game. She's killed some of them. This particular ninja seems to get the drop on her but she turns it around on him and makes him brain dead with her psychic knife. And unfortunately, though, right behind her is Matsuo Tsurayaba, who is the head of this particular branch of the hand, and who reveals that she isn't a perfect warrior yet, because how else was he able to sneak up on her? So after the exercise, she is taking a bath there, and he's talking about what's been going on in Hong Kong, Wolverine's arrival there, and basically he sends Psylocke to Hong Kong. And then our scene switches to Hong Kong, and Jubilee and Rose's granddaughter's shopping trip. They get into a little scuffle with some local Uncanny's toughs. Jubilee isn't taking any crap from them, and what happens though is unexpectedly they're yanked or abducted, but by whom is the question. So then there's a scene switch to Muir Isle, where Forge here has been outfitting the island with an updated security system. Moira has asked for that to be done because she's worried about the Reavers attacking the island. Banshee privately asks Forge to build in a back door into the security system, so that if anything goes wrong, he's got a bad feeling about what's happening on the island, in particular some changes in Moira's own behaviour, to build in a back door into the security system that they'll be able to get into the island. And then what happens is we have an appearance by this character here, Legion. So again, this is foreshadowing of a storyline that is going to be developed some issues in the future. Legion is David Haller, and he is Professor X's son. An incredibly powerful but mentally unstable young mutant that Moira has been trying to help on Muir Isle. Okay, then the scene switches to Hong Kong again. Wolverine is in the harbour, or at the harbour rather. He's feeling still the effects of the injuries he received in the Australian outback from the treatment of the Reavers, and his mutant healing factor doesn't seem to be handling his injuries in the way that it did in the past, and he's wondering whether it ever will again, and whether he's on the way out or not. So these hand ninjas sneak up on him, but actually they are unsuccessful in surprising him, and he emerges from one of these cargo crates in his patch uniform and attacks the ninja. So we have that brutal, bloody battle, and then it's broken up by the unexpected arrival of Jubilee, but she is, as Wolverine discerns, under someone else's control. Who could it be? Yes, it's Lady Mandarin, it's Psylocke. So Psylocke then attacks Wolverine. Wolverine initially doesn't recognize her as Psylocke because of her transformation into the body of an Asian woman. Wolverine is doing pretty good in the fight there. Nicely choreographed by Jim Lee, it should be noted. Nicely choreographed fight scene here. And then what happens is that he suddenly twigs that it is Psylocke, and the shock of it makes him lose his concentration, and Psylocke uses that hesitation on his part to hit him with her psychic knife, which disables him. And then we're more or less back to the scene on the front cover. So there you go. At the end of this particular issue, Psylocke, and by extension then the Hand, have Wolverine in their hands, and as she says there in the final panel, the Hand are going to get revenge now on one of their greatest foes, Wolverine. So we'll explore that in the next video, which will be focused on the next issue, That is Uncanny X-Men 258. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like the video. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Stay tuned.